You must track down the werewolf. Shocking and ghastly nightmare of
the most bizarre and brutal series.
Happy New Year, everybody! And now, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Death himself, Part 2.
As you know, in Dr. Death pictures, there's always a young and pretty victim. Sometimes I strangle her, sometimes I boil her alive, and sometimes, if I'm lazy, I just slit her throat from ear to ear. Miss Peters, as they say in horror movies, you will come to a bad end.
Wait a minute, you're supposed to be working on the Peters murders.
Oh, I am, sir. The Peters murder was done with a pitchfork. Exactly like the one in this film.
If Paul Toombs copied it, then he's a fool.
Hello, this is PJ Souls from Halloween and Innocent Prey and Carrie and totally a lot of other movies. And you are listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues, episode 159. And this time we're rectifying a wrong in so much that we are covering the original Patreon pick. Not Patreon pick, actually, sorry. Well, it's a listener pick by Annette Saul, who actually chose Madhouse, which he who shall not be named, Joseph, got wrong, and we covered last week Madhouse 1981, but in fact she chose Madhouse 1974, the Vincent Price, Peter Cushing proto-slasher. So we are rectifying that wrong by covering it this time. So that will be coming up shortly. But before we start, how's it going? Is it snowing in Ireland, Erik?
It's supposed to today on St. Patrick's Day, but where are my presents, by the way?
Your presents?
You're supposed to send me presents because it's St. Patrick's Day.
It's in the post.
Nothing has arrived yet.
It's in the post. It's in the post, Erik.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not snowing yet, but it is cold, and I have no intention of stepping outside today.
Oh, fair enough. Yes. Well, yeah. It's been snowing a little bit here, but it's supposed to be getting a heavy load later on tonight.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So, Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm Lou Paloma. Blow me.
Is that a Simpsons reference? I'm always lost. I never.
Tales from the Crypt.
Oh.
Yeah.
But not the 1970s.
See, I was.
Blow me on.
I was trying to think of a quote that would also insult the both of you for your shallow and pedantic insults. So I just chose "blow me" with the addendum of "I'm Lou Paloma." So there you go.
Well, as usual, that goes right over my head.
Yeah, me too.
You've never watched Tales from the Crypt, either of you?
Not the TV show. No, I've seen the two movies.
Oh, no, it's a lot of fun.
I hope it's better than Tales from the Dark Side.
What? I love Tales from
yeah, I said it there.
And Nathan, how's your head?
I'm leaving Twisted Hysteria, Erik.
Don't worry, Justin. We'll keep the misfits together.
Yes.
I am doing very well, and I have a question for Erik.
Yes.
I was watching a game show last night, and one of the questions is something about, I can't remember the name of it, a Blarthy Stone in Ireland.
Blarney Stone.
Have you ever visited it?
Have I ever kissed it? No. You're supposed to kiss it and you get the gift of the gab. Yeah. But it's very unhygienic.
Oh, okay.
The amount of saliva that must be on that stone. Yeah.
Are they making out with it?
I don't think you actually make out with it. You don't use your tongue or anything, but you just give it a little peck on the stone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was the question. I didn't know the answer to it because it was like, what do you do to the stone? And I said, put your hand on it, but I guess I was a little more sanitary.
Yeah.
Was the game show The Chase?
No.
Was it that one where you have to wear whammies, no whammies, no whammies? Stop.
No. It's called Child Support.
What?
Yeah, that's the name of it.
What, a game show?
Yeah, but I mean, really, it's like you get like a bunch of questions as an adult does. And if the adult gets it wrong, these kids get a chance to answer it too. And if the kids get it right, the adult can stay in the game.
Is that from the same makers as unemployment benefits?
There you go.
Sounds
it's
like
an entertaining show.
So
sounds like Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, actually.
Sort of. I mean, it's a different format, but it's kind of like that.
So it's not kind of like you play for your child's welfare, and if you lose, then they.
And if you lose, your
on the
child
street.
Didn't need welfare.
Well, that sounds very.
I'm going to a foster home.
But because of it, I now know what the Blarney Stone.
It's in Blarney Castle. Yeah.
Oh,
Eric,
that's why it's called that. Okay, all right.
Are you
They said a
sure,
Barney
Eric?
Stone. I was going to say, like, gee, Fred, I just kissed this big rock.
But Eric, I can't believe you've not kissed that stone with the gob you've got on you.
Hey! I'm so insulted. It's miles away. Anyway.
Well, so anyway, but we're talking of Irish things. We have recorded a commentary for Arrow's upcoming Rawhead Rex Blu-ray release.
Are you allowed to say that?
Well, I think so. Well, I presume I am. Well, it's already been the title's been announced, hasn't it? With all the other special features, but we have recorded a commentary for it, so I'm presuming we can talk about it. If not, then well,
oops. I mean, it's out in May, so I'm assuming they're not going to wait until May to say, "Hey, we add them onto the disc."
Exactly. So so we had a fun commentary for that. So hopefully that will be good. And we've also got another commentary coming up, or another one coming, and I can't remember if we can talk about that one, so I probably won't. But we do.
We've got a couple, actually, don't we?
We've got a few.
We've got a couple of,
We've got a couple of big ones coming our way. Yeah. That's all we can say at this moment. But, keep your eyes out.
And, of course, you know what tomorrow is, don't you?
Well,
the 18th of March.
18th of March.
Oh,
yes.
Drunkcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've got my booze.
Or just another normal day for Justin.
I mean, it's out of the ordinary for him.
Oh, how rude.
Yeah. It's a big deal for the other three of us.
He's probably already drunk right now, I'd say.
Yeah.
No, I'm drinking green tea with seaweed.
Ew.
Oh yeah, well, I'm drinking iced coffee.
Oh, very nice.
I'm not drinking anything.
It's delicious.
I have a cherry Pepsi Max. It's got 0 calories, so it's really good for me.
I think we should also just mention the when we talked about the Twisted Hysteria and Hysteria Misfits are the two. What do they call it when you get the supergroups of the podcast? And we will be singing songs. Supergroup. Well, that's what I said. Yeah. The supergroup from the podcast.
Well, the Misfits are a pooper group.
Oh, for goodness sake! We will be singing. We will be singing songs
it's
from
kind of like
Demons.
Are artistic. Yeah. It's about the music.
You're like the Misfits from Gem and the Outrageous Holograms. You're just evil and tuneless.
No, their songs were better. They said it in the opening credits.
Yeah, that's because they're so boastful and big-headed.
Well, if you want to hear us sing songs from Demons 1 and 2 and cover the films on our Drunkcast, then please become a Patreon. And the details on how to do that a little bit later in the show. So, shall we... Well, let's talk about what we've been watching recently. So, it's been a couple of weeks, I think, since we recorded. So, Eric, what have you been watching recently?
I actually watched 2 films on Netflix this week, and I think that's the first time I've ever watched 2 films on Netflix. I've had a subscription for about 2 years. I occasionally watch the odd BBC comedy show, but this is the first time I've actually watched some movies. I watched Annihilation, and this is caused a bit of a stir this week because this is a big budget movie by Alex Garland. It's his follow-up to Ex Machina, and it's gone straight to Netflix over here in Europe, whereas it had a big wide cinema release a couple of weeks ago in the States. It's deemed too intelligent, apparently, for mainstream audiences, which is why they pulled it from theatrical release in Europe. But it starts out kind of as a straightforward sci-fi mystery movie. There's these 5 military women who go into this hemispherical bubble that has appeared in Florida, and it's slowly expanding. They nickname it the Shimmer, so the team go into the Shimmer and discover that it's having a weird effect on all the flora and fauna, and it's playing havoc with all the DNA on every individual sort of living creature and plant. So it remains kind of a straightforward sci-fi movie for a good deal of its running time, and it has lots of effective moments of horror. And then the finale is, I suppose, the thing that it reminded me most of in terms of tone was something like Under the Skin, which is probably where the studio execs got a bit nervy about releasing it to, multiplexes over here because it has a more abstract feel for the final 20-25 minutes. And there's one moment in it that made me feel it was straight out of the movie. I think it's pronounced Kero, but it translates as Pulse, the Japanese surreal apocalyptic movie about technology. It was remade, of course, for the States, so it has a bit of that going on as well. I loved it, I have to say. It's probably not for our sci-fi hating co-host Nathan, but I thought there was loads to enjoy in the film. I still think it's mainstream enough to have gotten a cinema release over here, but as I don't really go to the cinema that often anymore, I was more than happy to have it dumped on Netflix early. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know if anyone else has any desire to catch up with Annihilation.
I've heard I've heard some pretty good things about it. A friend of mine actually recommended. He said it's not really your type of movie, but on the other hand, I think you would actually like it. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. But I did have a question for you, Erik.
Yes.
Do you like it when there's loads to enjoy?
Ha 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 ha. Yeah. You're just being dirty now. And you know what Baby Jesus says about dirty little boys? They're
get
bowls.
Everything they want in life?
No, they don't.
Okay. Oh, that's too bad.
I've seen Annihilation. I saw it on Netflix the other day, and I really liked it. No, I liked it. It's it's not a kind of wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of spaceman type movie by any stretch. I think the comparison to some of those Japanese films of the early 2000s, like Pulse, and a number of other films, is pretty spot on, really, because it's especially, like you say, the last half an hour, it becomes almost quite hypnotic, doesn't it? It's kind of
which I thought was great, but I can understand a lot of people would be a bit annoyed, but. No, exactly. And I think I think if, to be honest, if it means that they can make films that actually take a bit of a risk and actually do something a little bit different, and it means they go to Netflix in bypassing cinema, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. In so much, I think Paramount made its money back by selling onto Netflix anyway. So, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It was probably a bit over long. It's about an hour and 55 minutes, but. It's not a film I'm going to rush back to watch anytime soon, but I thought it was I would happily rewatch it, I think. Did you liked Under the Skin as well, didn't you?
I did. I mean, it did remind me, it's very similar to Under the Skin in a lot of ways. It has that hypnotic kind of pulsing feel to it throughout, doesn't it?
Oh, if it's anything like Under the Skin, then I'll probably love it, because I loved Under the Skin. I thought that was amazing.
It's got a really, I mean, I like the concept where this idea that you've got this shimmer where all the DNA is flying about, and so people and plants take on every living thing that starts taking on sort of the DNA of other living things around them. And I thought the bit with the bear that kind of after killing somebody got her voice and was walking around was quite creepy. It was quite well done. So,
and I really liked the little found footage moment in it where they find a video camera and they see what happened to a previous expedition, which I thought was quite creepy.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I'll talk to you off air, Erik, about my theory about what the ending meant.
Okay.
I don't want to give that away. So
yeah.
So excellent. Anything else, Erik?
Okay, the other one, I'm sort of probably stealing your thunder here, and maybe you want to wait until you're recently seen. But the other film I watched on your recommendation and seen as St. Patrick's Day as we're recording is Nails. So yes. Do you want to talk about Nails?
No, you go ahead. I think.
Okay, so Nails is an Irish horror film that I was completely unaware of until you mentioned you'd spotted it on Netflix, Justin. It opens with a scene of our heroine, who is, I can't remember the actress's name, but she was in The Descent. She's a Scottish actress.
Shauna MacDonald?
Sorry?
Shauna something, isn't it?
That's it, yeah, Shauna MacDonald, yeah. So she is hit by a car in a very abrupt scene where in a sort of hit and run accident, and it reminded me of the bus scene in Final Destination because it's that abrupt, and it's because it's so abrupt it becomes almost comical, and that's the sort of tone that the film sets out on from the very start. And then the rest of the film is set with her in the hospital recovering from the accident. She's paralyzed from the waist down. She can only communicate via a laptop in Stephen Hawking RIP type way. So she has to type in her speech, and it sort of comes out in a not really a robotic voice. It's kind of got this female, almost human-sounding voice, which is utterly unbelievable. She starts having these spooky apparitions of this man, which is, in fairness to the film, the apparition is genuinely creepy and it's very well done. The makeup is really good and all that. But the plot is utterly generic. It's trying to ride on the coattails of other sort of spooky apparition films like Lights Out and Mama and The Conjuring and Insidious and all those. But the plot is just so unengaging, and the serious tone that they're going for is radically undone by certain scenes throughout the film. As I said, our heroine can only communicate through this voice box where she types in the text. So she's, there's one scene where she's typing sort of an eloquent soliloquy to a doctor. It's like, you wouldn't do that if you type in sort of monosyllabic answers to things. You wouldn't be there like typing away like a secretary, giving a little speech about how you feel. The funniest moment for me by far is there's a scene where she's in a wheelchair and her daughter is pushing her around the hospital trying to escape the evil, and the lift is out of order, so they decide to take the stairs. And of course, she manages to get down one step, I think, before she goes plummeting down in hilarious fashion. And then there's another scene where the evil force levitates a person up and starts bashing them from side to side off the walls and off the ceiling and that, and it's absolutely comical. I was in fits of laughter watching it. It is a bad movie, but I'd say I wasn't entertained because I was. Would I rush back to watch it? I'd fast forward to the wheelchair scene and a few other bits and pieces. But no, I probably wouldn't watch it again. But I do have to admit that the creepy man who appears throughout the film, who's called Erik.
Yes.
Yeah, he is genuinely creepy looking, and I think the effects are very well done in that way. But it's a bit naff. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, it had the makings of a good creepy movie. I mean, it kind of reminded me. It could have gone the Patrick route. And I had some kind of creepy moments, but I don't know whether it was by design or whatever, but it just goes into completely farcical. I think Sean MacDonald tries really hard with the material. I think she's, by the end, with her going down the stairs in the wheelchair and the last half an hour of the film is just so over the top. It's so ridiculous. We were just laughing. Our tears were running down our cheeks as well. We just thought it was, when you start a film and you don't know anything about it. And I thought, I had looked at the reviews on IMDb and people are going, it was awful. But then, to be honest, I always thought it was a pinch of salt because people are always going, it's the worst film ever made, on practically everything on IMDb. And you just think, well, I'd make up my own mind. It is just ridiculous. The whole film is very silly, and I'd love to know whether or not it was meant to be that silly or it was actually done with a straight face. I don't know. What about you, Joseph and Nathan? Did you manage to catch it?
No, I meant to, but it kind of completely slipped my mind. But hearing about that wheelchair moment, now I have to watch it.
Yeah, I'll watch it before our next show so we can talk about it too.
Yeah, because the wheelchair scene is like, okay, you're going to have to be really careful now. Take me down the stairs.
God, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it on Netflix in the States? Because it's a fairly new movie. It's 2017. I think it only appeared on Netflix over here in the last few weeks or so.
I don't know.
I'm not sure if it is or not.
I don't know. I have to look.
Account pulled up, so I'd have to look at it later.
Let me look and see.
Okay.
No, but I wanted to see that because Justin's, I guess, half-hearted recommendation that it was very funny kind of made me want to watch it, but it completely slipped my mind. Let's see if it's on Netflix over here. Yep, it is.
Okay,
awesome.
Well, there you go. So, thank you, Erik. Is there anything else?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Okay.
I got my €17 worth out of Netflix this month. Finally.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, Joseph, how about you?
Well, I'm still watching Ash vs. Evil Dead up to the 3rd episode. Still having a lot of fun with that, but I really won't go into much detail about that.
I watched the first episode of that this morning.
So what did you think?
I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was really good.
The season is still humming along for me. The show's still humming along for me, so I'm still enjoying it. But the only thing I really watched was a independent thriller called Midnighters. It's sort of a lower rent variation on A Simple Plan from Sam Raimi. It stars the lovely and talented Alex Esso, who was quite impressive in Starry Eyes from a few years back. And it starts out quite promising. It kind of lets the suspense sort of slowly build. It's definitely a slow burn for the first 30 to 45 minutes. But there's two factors that are introduced midway through that pretty much unequivocally killed the remainder of the movie for me. Without spoiling too much, the plot is basically this couple who are on their way home from a New Year's Eve party. They both had a little too much to drink, and they accidentally strike and kill a man with their car on this kind of deserted back road, or so they think. It's not really much of a spoiler to say that it turns out that the guy isn't quite dead, and things kind of spiral out of control from there. But I was with the movie for about 30 to 45 minutes because the characters were pretty likable, and they seemed to be making, the right decisions, concerning a very bleak situation for a change. But man, they introduce an actress into the story who I guess her character's kind of integral to the plot, but boy, her thespian abilities were so bad that it was like a black hole, just basically sucking all the fun and suspense out of the film every time she.
That's Justin's line.
Yeah, every time she had a line, it was just like the film would just come to a complete stop. But acting aside, I'm sometimes willing to forgive acting, so I kind of brushed that aside. But then the worst, the biggest sin the film commits is that everyone in the film, by the halfway point, they just start behaving kind of very unbelievably in order to put one specific character into a situation that would warrant the film's kind of, I guess, its closing payoff. It's like no one knew how to realistically arrive to the story's conclusion. So I guess they took what started out as believable, characters and just twisted them like pretzels into different characters entirely. And they seemed like they were from a different movie and a different plot altogether. And it was just very frustrating. I mean, once I got to the payoff, I just didn't really care anymore. I mean, because the character who I guess gets the payoff was now basically a completely different character, and not really the one that I'd been rooting for previously. I mean, I know characters are supposed to evolve in movies, but I think the key word is evolve and not just swap personalities in the blink of an eye. It's just, I don't know, it just felt really lazy. It's not a bad film. It's got some pretty good suspense for the first half, and it's shot well on, I'm assuming, a modest budget, but it's just so frustrating. The plot is so frustrating how they just kind of contort things just to fit that payoff. I think the story could have stood of a couple of rewrites before going in front of the cameras, and maybe recast a certain actress in the film. I'm not going to say a miss or a hit. I'm just going to say it's got the makings of a really good thriller, but it's just so frustrating.
Okay, I've not seen that. And Nathan, is that one you've caught?
No, I haven't seen it either.
Okay. And
You'd
Erik?
probably feel the same way as me, Nathan. You'd probably be like, oh, this first 45 minutes, this is really suspenseful, but then it just really goes off the rails.
That's a bummer.
Is there anything else, Joseph?
Boy, I think that's all for this week.
Okay, well, thank you. Nathan, how about you?
I watched one called Viral that came out just a few years ago. It's like the movie where this weird flu hits a town and they get quarantined, and like these two sisters, it's basically they're the main characters, these two sisters who are separated from their dad. I liked it. I thought it was good. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10. I mean, it's fairly run of the mill in my opinion, but that didn't mean it wasn't entertaining. It was just, it's kind of the movie kind of had a been there, done that feel to it, with the whole viral infection. I mean, I've seen so many of those movies, and I like them well enough, but it's not like a slasher movie for me. Like slasher movies, I mean, I know that we could say that a lot of them are, follow the same basic formula, but I find those entertaining. Whereas these, it's good enough, but I don't know. That's just not my particular subgenre in horror. But I mean, like I said, 6 out of 10, it's not a bad movie. I would recommend it to, horror fans in general.
Cool. I have seen that, but a year or so ago, so I don't remember that much about it. But maybe it's quite slick, isn't it? It's quite a kind of well-made film.
Yeah, but I'm like you. Ask me a year from now if I remember anything about it, and I bet I won't.
No.
That's the bad thing about it, I guess. And the other one I've been very excited to talk to you guys about is The Strangers Prey at Night.
Okay.
Loved it. I loved every minute of this movie. It is just a fun slasher movie. It is nothing like the original Strangers, and I was glad, because you guys know how I feel about bleak and depressing movies. They aren't my cup of tea. So, I mean, while I did like The Strangers because it was creepy enough, it's just not one I would ever want to go back and watch again because of that whole like downbeat atmosphere. But this one takes it much more upbeat. I mean, like it's very over the top. It's very ridiculous in many scenes, but it just features like this family of 4 like fighting, these 3 strangers, and they do a really good job of fighting back. Like it's a crazy battle at this trailer park. And there's this awesome sequence where they're playing Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler while 2 particular characters are fighting in a pool. And it's just really good because the song is being played over the loudspeakers. And when the camera goes above the water, you hear it very clearly. But, of course, when it focuses on them fighting under the water, it's very muffled, like basically how they would hear it. So I thought that was really a good choice on the director's part. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really fun slasher movie. I read a review, and somebody was basically giving it a negative review. They were saying something along the lines of, this movie is just a dumb slasher. It's like 3 Jasons versus 4 victims. And I'm like, what is wrong with that? Like, that's good to me. Like, that's a recommendation.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It actually got 3.5 stars on RogerEbert.com, which was pretty shocking, because ever since in his later years, Roger Ebert kind of softened up on slasher films. He actually gives some pretty high marks to a couple, but when he died and a lot of these kind of indie reviewers took over, they just kind of knock everything. So I was actually shocked to see that this film got almost 4 stars on that particular site. So I'm kind of hopeful for it. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it.
I mean, it's not, the next Halloween or anything, but I mean, it's just an entertaining, fun movie. I mean, it was just a fun time at the movies for me. And that always kind of enhances the experience when the whole audience is really engaged with the movie and, kind of, yelling at characters who are doing stupid things, which actually that was another thing I was going to mention is I was reading a lot of reviews for this one. And I mean, obviously it being a horror movie, characters in this movie make dumb decisions that make you want to slap your head. But the problem for me is that so many people are complaining like this movie takes the stupidity of its characters to a whole new level and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it really doesn't, because I mean, Evil Dead is one of the classics in the horror genre, and I love it. Like I would give it a 10 out of 10, but we can't say that the characters are smart in that movie. I mean, Cheryl hears a voice calling her name in the woods in the middle of the night, and she decides to go and investigate this voice. I mean, that is one of the dumbest decisions anybody could make. So I'm like, I don't think it's fair to consider it an awful thing that this new Strangers movie has characters doing dumb things when all slasher movie characters or slasher movies have characters that do dumb things. I mean, it's par for the course. You can find something stupid in every movie.
Especially Nocturne.
Yeah. My defense of that has always been if you're faced with a dangerous situation, in my mind, you're not going to do all the right things. Your adrenaline and your fear is going to take over, and you're going to get sluggish. You're not going to think clearly. So I don't find a lot of these decisions stupid. Now there are some exceptions, like Wrong Turn 4, where the decisions are extremely, extremely stupid. But for the most part, I can forgive someone who decides to check out a noise when they shouldn't. But I just don't find fault with little nitpicky things like that. And I think that's just
I don't want to watch horror films where people don't check out noises. That's the whole joy of horror.
I know. I love that characters do that. See, I'm not knocking Evil Dead for Cheryl going out and doing it. I'm just saying that it's just a normal situation in horror movies. Characters do dumb things. I love it. I mean, that's kind of the way it works.
Yeah. It's part of the fun is getting the audience participation. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, if they did everything right, it would be boring. You'd just be sitting there thinking, okay, they're doing everything right. They're going to make it out alive. No one's going to get hurt. Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like Halloween. Like people yell at Laurie when she drops the knife after she stabs Michael with the knitting needle. But if she went over there and finished him off, we wouldn't have got the big finale that we got. So, I mean, come on. That's we should be glad she dropped the knife.
Exactly, but not so much with Erik dropping the soap in the shower.
Hey.
Oh, no.
You can only wish.
Have you seen that, Joseph? You seen?
No. God, I tried to catch it this weekend, but I didn't have time. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to try to catch it this week if I can.
Cool, excellent. Well, thank you, Nathan. Is anything else?
Yes, but it's actually going to end up being my next Patreon pick, so I'm not going to talk about it now. Okay. But I will say that everybody's going to love it.
Okay, well, we'll take that with a pinch of salt. But thank you, Nathan. So I caught up with a couple of other things. Obviously, we've spoken about Nails and Annihilation. But I saw a film that was quite similar, well, in some ways, to the one we're covering today, which was the 1967 proto-slasher Berserk with Joan Crawford as a ringmaster of a circus in the United Kingdom when people started being killed, bumped off one by one at the circus. And it's a very, as you might expect, it's a kind of campy, good time, sort of one of her hagsploitation movies she made in the wake of Baby Jane. It's very campy. I mean, it's not a great film. The other reason I kind of compared it to Madhouse today is it stops every 25 minutes or 20 minutes to show you like 5 minutes worth of circus acts, which kind of kills the suspense dead. It's not as bad as in Madhouse isn't as bad, where it stops every 5 minutes to show you clips of old Vincent Price movies, but it's had a similar feel to it. But there's some great kills in it. It's got Diana Dors as like this bitchy sort of circus entertainer who gets sawn in half, and also got Michael Gough, who there's a great scene with him. Sorry, spoiler alert. But when those kind of that we talked about, those kind of really unlikely murders that you see in films, like when the killer's hiding inside a deep freeze or inside a snowdrift or something like that, just in case somebody wanders past. In this, there's a great scene where somebody walks into the massive deserted big top, goes over, stands in front of a pole which has a hole through it, leans his head back against the pole, and someone hammers a tent pole through the back of it into his head. So it just all hinges on the fact that he would walk over to that particular pole in this kind of like 600-foot square circus tent. But that's kind of a campy, good time. Have you guys seen that?
Never seen it, no.
Okay.
I feel like I've seen that a long time ago, but I almost wish you were talking about the 1987 Berserker.
Oh yeah,
about the bear, or
that's fun.
or the werebear or whatever it is, killing people. Or the Nordic thing.
The Gary Newman single Berserker.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely worth watching if you get a chance. Even just going to fast forward to the last 5 minutes, because the revelation of who the killer is so over the top and so ridiculous. And what happens to the killer is so bizarre and ridiculous that it just kind of makes it all worthwhile. So if you ever get a chance, do watch that. And the other film I watched was a newer slasher movie from a few years ago, which I hadn't seen. One that I imagine that Nathan will hate, because of its the way it finishes up, is Fender Bender. Have you guys seen that?
Yes.
I'm aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
Did you hate that, Nathan?
I didn't hate the movie, but blah to the ending.
Well, that's
Just
what I
blah.
thought. That's what I thought. It's kind of I liked it. It was advertised as a throwback to 80s slasher movies, and it is kind of. It's kind of quite a clever idea that this guy goes around and crashes into the back of women in his car, like Fender Bender, and then exchanges details with them, and then he stalks them because he has their home address and telephone number, and he does that to a 17-year-old student, and then he goes to her house and her friends around, and he kind of kills them off one by one. I thought it was pretty effective. It's pretty good fun, but it's quite a bleak. The ending's quite bleak, which is why I thought Nathan may not have enjoyed it as much. But Joseph, have you caught that?
No, but our friend Armando Munoz, who used to go by Hambone on the forums, I may be wrong, but it seems like his partner is one of the stuntmen on the film, and he'd kind of championed it a while back. So I need to check it out.
Okay, all right, interesting.
I may have that movie mixed up. I need to ask him, but I'm pretty sure it was Fender Bender, because isn't that the movie with the killer? He sort of wears almost like fetishistic kind of clothing, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Then that's the movie he was talking about.
Okay, cool. Okay,
directed by Mark Pavia, it looks like, who did The Night Flyer, which I like The Night Flyer.
Yeah, The Night Flyer is like 1 billion times better.
Yeah, I love Night Flyer. I might have to pick that one at some point for Patreon.
I've never seen Night
Flyer.
Because
I like that movie.
Yeah.
I've never seen Night Flyer. Is that a Stephen King adaptation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an adaptation with Miguel Ferrer, who recently passed away. Really, really effective. A little, I guess you'd call it a vampire movie in a way.
Okay, I shall check that out. So, well, that's what we've been watching recently. So, without further ado, let's go on to the main attraction. When his new wife is murdered on their wedding day, American Horror star Paul Toombs, Vincent Price, has a breakdown as institutionalized. A decade later, he returns the spotlight when his Dr. Death character is resurrected for a British TV series. Written by his longtime friend Herbert Flay, Peter Cushing, and produced by his old rival Oliver Quayle, Robert Quarry. But a series of new murders in the style of his screen character tests his sanity once again. So, Madhouse is it's an interesting film in so much that it very much harks back to the past, but also has one eye on the future. In so much, this is definitely a proto-slasher in a lot of ways. I reviewed this on Hysteria Lives a couple of years ago, and I remember thinking there's scenes towards the end of the movie, specifically a scene where the killer, who is dressed in a black fedora, a cape and black gloves and a skull face, which is very reminiscent of a movie, one of Nathan's favourite movies we covered, The Phantom of Soho, the Krimi from the 1950s, I think, or yes. But the skull, is a bit more lively. This one, but the killer has a skull mask, which he's chasing this woman around TV studios and sets, and it wouldn't be out of place in an early 80s slasher movie, certainly. So it's an interesting film in so much you've got Vincent Price, you've got Peter Cushing and Robert Quarry, and of course big horror movie stars, or certainly Peter Cushing and Vincent Price more so than what's his name, Robert Quarry. But although he was in the Count Yorga films and was being groomed to be one of the big horror stars going forward, but this is kind of looking back to their kind of halcyon days. Certainly Vincent Price, because as I mentioned before, the film kind of stops every half an hour or so for clips from his old movies, and Vincent Price is playing this fictional character of Dr. Death, who is I say there's a great scene at the beginning of the film where you have that you heard at the beginning of the show, he's having a party and a woman with the worst American accent in the world jumps out of a cake. and like a little Minnie Mouse accent sort of says, introduces him as Dr. Death. And he has an argument with his fiancée because apparently she appeared in some Blue movies, and when he goes up to give her cuddle and apologise, he goes to do so and her head falls off. She's been decapitated, which is a fantastic scene, quite unlikely in so much there's no blood on her pink negligee, but there you go. And so the film is it or is it not him who is the killer? And there's nods back to all the kind of gothic trappings. He goes to live with Peter Cushing, and down in the basement for some unknown reason is one of his old co-stars who lives downstairs with spiders and has been horribly disfigured in a car crash. So he goes to work on a TV show, reprising his role as Dr. Death, and then people connected to the TV show start ending up murdered by pitchfork, double impalement, being crushed by movie props, or being chased around the studio by a killer in a cape and the skull mask. So it kind of looks forward to the slash movie from the 1980s. I mean, this is only 4 years away from Halloween. And it's a kind of culmination, I kind of guess, of the Vincent Price AIP shockers of the Dr. Phibes and Theatre of Death films, which more played on the kind of murder as a set piece, which was kind of very much utilised in films like Friday the 13th going forward. And the old Grand Guignol kind of murder as a set piece, but Madhouse actually takes that further in so much the murders aren't as flashy or showy as Dr. Phibes or Theatre of Blood, but it certainly ups the slasher movie or the proto-slasher chase scenes, and so it's kind of a schizophrenic picture. If you're not a fan of Vincent Price or films from the early 70s, you might find it a little bit slow for the first half or 2/3 of the movie, but certainly I think by the closing third it really amps up the action, and it's very over the top, very campy, although I would say in some ways it's not as campy as Dr. Phibes or Theatre of Blood. It has a bit of a maudlin streak to it as well, in so much as Vincent Price isn't quite as campy as is in those movies. He plays quite a kind of a sad character, but I liked it. I'm glad we're covering it, because I know we have had requests to cover some of those movies like Theatre of Blood and the Phibes movies, and I'm sure we'll get round to them eventually. But this is probably the most proto-slasher of his films, and of course he was in the original House of Wax, which has its own kind of proto-slasher leanings from I think 1954. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of it. Eric, is this your first time?
This was my first time seeing it, yes. And now I am a fan of Dr. Phibes movies. Theatre of Blood I haven't seen in a long time. I do recall liking it though, and I did really enjoy this one, I have to say. I wouldn't be a huge devotee of the films of the iconic horror stars of this era. You know, I wouldn't be rushing out to see all the Vincent Price movies or all the Peter Cushing ones or Christopher Lee. As good as actors as they are, I think it's just a generational thing. But having said that, I did enjoy Madhouse completely. You know, in a weekend where we'll be covering the first two Demons films in our Patreon special podcast, as we were mentioning, those two movies make no attempt at having a narrative, whereas here there's sort of plenty going on plot-wise. It's I suppose a whodunit as such, but even I managed to guess who was behind all the mayhem, and that's saying something, because I'm the worst person for guessing killers' identities in slasher movies, so I'm imagining it was obvious to all you guys as well. It's a really well-made movie, as you said. There's a strong feel of Theatre of Blood and the Phibes movies. There is that campy sense, I think, as you said, not as campy as those ones, but you're seeing guys running around in capes and fedoras, and just Vincent Price's voice in general is really campy, I think. He can't help but be kind of almost effeminate, I suppose, with his voice. It certainly was an interesting choice to put him. He's the voice on Thriller, isn't he, by Michael Jackson?
Yes, yeah, he is.
So his voice has never been sinister to me. It's always been quite camp, I would think. The scene that most reminds me of Dr. Phibes was that one with the booby-trapped four-poster bed, which crushes the poor hapless director of what's supposed to be the Dr. Death TV series. I was wondering if Dr. Death is supposed to be based on Dr. Phibes at all, or this feels almost like it's Vincent Price's own version of Cat in the Brain or New Nightmare as such, where he's insinuation that the Dr. Phibes films have driven him insane in reality and forced him to go out and kill, or have they? I love that over the top character you're mentioning, who's found in the basement looking after the spiders. She reminds me of, that's what will happen to Justin now if he ever sort of loses the plot. This is it's kind of the thing you do, Justin, I think, because it's kind of goth to live in the basement with lots of spiders. No.
But I thought she was a little bit more with that ginger fright wig. It reminded me of something else.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. Her character, by the way, she's Faye Carstairs, I think, but when she gets married to Peter Cushing's character, she becomes Faye Flay, which I think makes her sound like a Thai prostitute. But no, thumbs up for me. A good choice, Madhouse. I actually find it to be far superior to the 1981 Madhouse. I wish we had known that our listener pick had been this version, so it would have saved us having to watch the 1981 version again for last week's show. But hey ho, big thumbs up for me. I love 60s British horror movies. Wouldn't do a lot for me. I wouldn't be a fan of Hammer, but Amicus stuff from the 70s I do really like, and this is one of them. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Erik. Joseph, how about you?
Well, unlike Madhouse from 1981, which we recently covered, I'd only seen 1974's Madhouse once in the past 30 years. So watching it again was like basically watching something I'd never seen before, because I had not retained any memories of the film, since I first saw it so many years ago. But I really enjoyed it. I think it does a really great job of kind of being, I guess, sort of meta before meta was meta. It humorously plays on, Vincent Price's status as a well-established horror star. I mean, here you can't help but think maybe Price was beginning to feel his entire acting career was one note, being, I guess, sort of typecast as a horror film centerpiece. And there's some good gags with him, running away from Dr. Death, both figuratively and literally, almost as metaphors for him trying to escape his career almost. I guess that's kind of how I saw it. But they also do a good job of, implementing clips from old Vincent Price movies that sort of underpin the pathos of his character, rather than say, I guess, pad out the running time, like in something later but similar, like Doom Asylum. It kind of reminded me of that, put in clips here and there, but it doesn't feel like padding here. But I think mostly the film it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it builds up to a good fiery climax, and I think the killer reveal is both patently obvious with the sort of the law of casting another big name in a thankless role. So it's but yet there's a good joke there about the popularity difference between both actors. And so I guess, spoiler alert, the killer does turn out to be Peter Cushing's character. Price and Cushing, both big, great names, but obviously one more so memorable than the other. So I think they kind of play on that joke a little bit here with, I guess, Cushing a little jealous that, Price got the Dr. Death role instead of him. And in real life, I would assume, or at least in my mind, that Vincent Price is definitely a more recognizable name than Peter Cushing. So there's sort of a kind of subtext there, which I got a kick out of. I mean, it's got some great set pieces, some really beautiful cinematography, and just the right amount of campy acting all across the board. I mean, I found no real fault with the film. It's breezy. It's a lot of fun. It's just I don't know. I just had a great time. So thumbs enthusiastically raised high for me.
I think the Vincent Price versus Peter Cushing thing that's set up in the film reminded me of Twisted Hysteria versus Hysteria Misfits. The jealousy and the bitter warring. Yeah.
Well, we'll see who comes out triumphant tomorrow, won't we?
Oh, we will.
Yes. So, Nathan, what did you think of Madhouse?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I agree with what you guys were saying. I mean, I love Vincent Price, so I mean, he's fun in, everything that I've seen him in. But Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you guys said, the killer was pretty easy to guess, but I mean, that doesn't really take too much away from it. In all honesty, it's for the fun aspect of it, and I loved all the death scenes. I thought they were all really good. I especially loved the death scene of the actress who got hung by her hair. And I'm like, the whole scene with the killer and her, I thought was really well done. And I liked the chase scene between Vincent Price and the killer. And then I also really liked the chase scene at the end with the woman. Oh, her name. What was her name?
His personal assistant, that girl.
Yes, I cannot remember her name. But I loved her chase scene too. And I mean, I just kept thinking to myself, like, this is actually like a lot of fun, and it did remind me of sort of an 80s slasher, and at least so much as I thought the chase scenes and everything were fun, and the whole thing just had this air of fun about it. And sorry, Justin, but since you brought it up, it's fresh in my mind. But something like Fender Bender, that I don't really find to be a fun movie. I find it to be, a little too bleak for me. But something like this is just fun all the way around because it's just so campy. And, that's my kind of movie. I love camp, and I love, cheesy horror. I just think they're the best. And I love the pitchfork death, too, by the way, with Linda Hayden. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think I'm glad we got to cover this one. I mean, I'm a big fan of the early 70s, the Amicus, like Tales from the Crypt and all of those. But I'm like with Erik, I'm not. I quite like some of the Roger Corman films and some of the Hammer films, but they're not ones I go back to. And I think it's partly because of when we grew up, wasn't it? That we're a bit too young for those movies. So that's why my introduction to Vincent Price probably would have been through Michael Jackson's Thriller video and the song, which is why we kind of knew him as that kind of, they had that kind of campiness. And of course, he wasn't a horror movie star to start off with. It wasn't until House of Wax, I think, in '54 that he kind of got that tag, but he'd been a kind of leading man before that. But did you see that House of Wax is coming out on 3D Blu-ray? It will interest you, but it won't have any effect on me because I don't have a setup for it. But I've got it already. Actually, I bought. I bought the French one, but I've got the in 3D, and it works really well in 3D. There's lots of yo-yos popping out the screen and all sorts of things. There's stuff that Nathan likes. But that's because it's I think it was, well, if I remember, the picture was kind of relatively square. I don't know if that was how it was shot originally, kind of, which meant I could blow up really big on the wall. So watching it in 3D, it looked really good. I kind of, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie. It kind of, from what I read, I mean, it was the last of the AIP Vincent Price collaborations. It essentially was the death knell of that kind of Amicus kind of, by the mid 70s, that whole thing had kind of died off to some degree. Not completely, but certainly for Vincent Price. And then he came back and was parodied himself even more in films like Bloodbath at the House of Death with Kenny Everett, and The House of Long Shadows, again with Peter Cushing in the early 1980s. But it's kind of it's kind of bittersweet in a lot of ways. I think you're on the money, Joseph, when you're sort of saying that maybe, I don't know, it's almost, if Vincent Price is like, say, running away from what potentially he'd become kind of shoehorned into, or become a sort of what's the word for it? He basically typecast. Yeah, but that's
pigeonholed,
that's why I kind of felt he had like a certainly maudlin character to him, which I think Dr. Phibes did to some degree as well. Whereas Theatre of Blood, it was very, very much kind of much archer, much sort of campier. But yeah, I love British horror movies from the 1970s. Not all of them, but I do. I mean, those are the films that were about when I was growing up, and I was too young to see them. So they were the films that I remember wanting to see. And it has a really nice kind of quirky characters, like the couple that the step mom and dad of the Linda Hayden's character,
they're really weird,
and they're kind of, plays this fantastic strumpet who's trying to get a role in Dr. Death, and then she gets a comeuppance by a pitchfork to the neck. And I love, the absurdity of having movie props, well, the TV props in this case, like the bed that kind of crushes the director, as you were mentioning, Erik. And the fact is that would you really actually have something that could actually kill somebody, a prop that could kill, which I know sometimes props do kill, and people have died on movie sets in the past. But and also for American audiences, they may not get the Michael Parkinson, who was the interviewer, is very, very famous in the UK as he was the big celebrity interviewer through the 1970s and 1980s. So that was a bit meta. I like the fact that Vincent Price had been chased around by the mad killer around the studios, and then ends up in this TV studio with an audience where he was actually meant to be there anyway, but he'd just been woken up by his assistant and said, come to the studio to meet me. All a bit convoluted, but he ends up, and then he kind of sits there and has a very genial chat with Michael Parkinson about his career after being chased around by the mad killer 5 minutes earlier. But there you go. Should we talk about some background?
Yep.
Who would like to go?
Sure.
Who would like to go first? Okay. Well, Joseph, what have you got?
The title credits mention special participation by Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff, who had died in 67 and 69 respectively. The film included scenes in which they had appeared with Vincent Price from previous AIP films. Rathbone was in Tales of Terror in 1962. Karloff was in The Raven from 1963. Other AIP films starring Price that had scenes played in the film include The Haunted Palace, The Pit and the Pendulum, Scream and Scream Again, and House of Usher. Madhouse is very loosely based on a novel called Devil Day from 1969 by Angus Hall, which bears very little similarity to the finished film. In the novel, the character Paul Toombs is an overweight and dissipated sexual predator who may very well have murdered his wife. His famous cinematic alter ego is named Dr. Dis, not Dr. Death. The novel was reprinted and issued under the title Madhouse to coincide with the release of this film. And that's pretty much all the background I have for this week.
Okay, well, thank you, Joseph. What about you, Nathan?
The film performed considerably less well at the box office than any other horror movies Price had made for AIP. And I got that off Wikipedia, not IMDb, Justin.
Oh, well done. Thank you for branching out.
Thank you. Otherwise, no.
No, okay. Thank you. Erik, how about you?
Okay, well, as Joseph was saying, very loosely based on the 1969 novel called Devil Day, and that's the title it was originally planned to be filmed under in 1970. Cameras didn't start rolling on the project, though, until May the 14th, 1973, when it was filmed under the title Revenge of Dr. Death. There was lots of location shooting involved, and the interiors were done at Twickenham Studios. The interiors were done for over the course of 2 weeks. Angus Hall, the author of the novel, was on set, and when he saw the rushes, he said it became patently clear that very little of his novel was actually going to make it onto the screen, and most it. Basically the only character that remained intact was Dr. Death himself. Other names it's known as were The Madhouse of Dr. Fear, or if you Google translate the Greek title of the movie, it comes out as Terror at Home the Ghosts, which I think sounds really good. It was released in March of 1974, which was when I was 1 month old. So it was released to celebrate my birth, really, when you think about it. Jim Clark, the director, this was his last directorial outing. He became more known when he established himself as a highly regarded editor, and he worked on films like The Killing Fields, Marathon Man, The Mission, The World Is Not Enough. His last editorial credit was for 2008's Happy Go Lucky, which was a Mike Leigh movie. He died in 2016. The movies that did you mention the names of the movies that were pilfered for use throughout the film, Joseph?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I did.
Okay. So minor scream queen Linda Hayden, as Nathan pointed out, plays Elizabeth. She had previously been in Blood on Satan's Claw and Taste the Blood of Dracula, and she went on to diversify after this and moved into to comedic roles. She was in some of the Confessions films. Robert Quarry was also in the zombie blaxploitation movie Sugar Hill in 1974. Adrian Corey, who plays Fayflay, the Susie-alike goth who lives in the basement with lots of spiders. Her most famous role was as Mrs. Alexander, who is the rape victim in A Clockwork Orange. Barry Denon, who plays the ill-fated director who gets crushed by the four-poster bed, he is, according to IMDb, a classmate of George Takei. Now, I'm trying to work out if that's a euphemism, because, Justin, are you a classmate of George Takei?
I don't know. I don't get it. I'm like Nathan.
Is he trying to be like a friend of Dorothy kind of thing? Is that what
I'm wondering? I'm wondering if that's a euphemism. A friend of Dorothy, a classmate of George Takei. Anyway, he was married to a lady, and he once lived with Barbara Streisand, so maybe not. He's best known for his work in musical theatre, particularly Jesus Christ Superstar, and he sadly passed away last year. And that's all I have, Justin. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much. You've covered most of the things I have. I just kind of wanted to mention that Peter Cushing normally played very kind of amiable, kind of wise characters, and he was most famously obviously played the Van Helsing character in a lot of the Hammer movies, but he had played a killer before in the very grim, well, not grim, but it is kind of very violent film from 1967, I think it was, Corruption, another British protest slasher, where he plays a kind of sweaty sex killer, which is very much against type. So that's worth a watch if you get a chance. Samuel Z. Arkoff, who kind of was behind financing of this movie, he and behind AIP, I believe. He this is obviously the last time he because of the box office failure, the film didn't do particularly well, not compared to the successes of the Dr. Phibes movies, but he went on to produce kind of notable subgenre offerings such as The Town That Dreaded Sundown in 1976, Dressed to Kill, and The Final Terror in 1983. And I think we might have mentioned this before, but Vincent Price was originally considered as the head counselor role, or the kind of the older gentleman role in Madhouse in 1982, in 1982, but that didn't come to pass, unfortunately. The other things I just it was a troubled production. Apparently Vincent Price is so horrified by how bad the script was originally that he got someone else in to rewrite it. And the only other thing I have is at the end of the movie, he went round and gave everyone £1 to go bet on the races after finishing the movie. So a true gentleman. And that's all I've got for the background on Madhouse.
I just have one last thing. When I was watching the end credits, one name stuck out just for no particular reason. The wardrobe supervisor is a lady called Dulcie Midwinter. And she died in Surrey, which is where you're from, Justin, in 1997. But I just like the name Dulcie Midwinter.
It's a nice name, isn't it?
It is.
Dulcie. You don't hear many Dulcies anymore, do you?
Or Midwinters.
No. So, Joseph, we haven't got many people who have got back to us about this film on the Facebook boards, but do you want to regale us with some of those?
Sure, this is from Facebook. Lawrence Adams says, fave Vincent Price along with Theater of Blood. And sorry if you hear thunder in the background. It's starting to rain really hard here. Lawrence Adams says, favorite Vincent Price along with Theater of Blood. I know Justin is a fan, right? And I think you responded to him. So Tim S. Turner says, I love it. Never understood the hate for it. Roger Cowley says, have not seen it, but it's another film you have brought to my attention, fellas. You're the best podcast out there by a country mile. Keep it up, chaps. Oh, and by the way, tell Erik when I play the music at HorrorCon at Sheffield, I've never played a Toya song, but I play plenty of Susie. Yes. Just saying. Ha, 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 ha.
Ha, 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 ha.
But Toya is from Birmingham, which is not that far from Sheffield, whereas Susie's from Satan's bottom.
Oh, Erik.
Yeah. Simon Logan. That's Simon Logan says, a first-time watch for me, but a great one, though. I'm not sure how much of a slasher it is. Kirstie Alley was great in it, though.
I think you've been watching the wrong Madhouse again. That's very...
But then he he later goes on to say, a joy to watch. Price and Cushing in the same film with a guest appearance by Michael Parkinson. Who couldn't love that? More ham than something very hammy. It's always nice to get a British film in amongst the American and Italian ones, and something about this era is so endearing. Great stuff. Over on Twitter, the Bitter Bastard says, it's a lot of fun. I like that name, the Bitter Bastard. Yeah. That's cool. It's a lot of fun. Price and Cushing play off each other really well. I love the Dr. Death outfit. It plays like a British giallo, in my opinion. Travis says, I have never seen it. Sad face. And Alone in the Dark Book says, love it. A childhood favorite. Watching as an adult, you notice some of the production issues more, but still a winner in our book, quite literally. Hashtag Madhouse, hashtag Vincent Price, hashtag Peter Cushing, and hashtag Michael Parkinson. And that's all the feedback I have.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for everyone who wrote in. Do we want to do an after the credits? Nathan, are you...
Yeah, well, we could do an after the credits on this one.
Okay.
So if you would like to play the jingle.
The jingle. Okay. Here
the jingle.
It was very French.
Don't stop. Shut after the credits show. Okay. We do know the killer was vanquished at the end and fed to some spotters. So, what do you think happened to Toombs after this? I think he went on to live a wonderful life and later went on to become a librarian in the town of Oldfield, Tennessee. And I'm going to pass it to Joseph. By the way, that's a reference to Vincent Price in The Offspring, which is really good, by the way.
Okay. Whoosh, going over my head. I've never seen The Offspring.
Oh, it's so good. I'll pick it at some point. But Joseph?
Well, he was applying makeup to his burn to look a little better at the end. But I think he might have led a somewhat normal existence until he died, and then he was unfortunately entombed. Tombs.
Is that your joke of the week?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Eric?
Well, I think that the last 5 minutes are a hallucination of Peter Cushing's because the way that Vincent Price seems to appear out of the screen all of a sudden, I think it felt like a supernatural event. So I'm thinking that was an hallucination because now he's gone insane because he possibly feels guilt over the death of Dr. Death. So then the sequel has him basically doing the same stuff over again. It's just an impersonator, kind of like Friday the 13th Part 5. And there's a woman with big boobs who goes around in the woods and gets her eyes clipped out with hedge clippers. like really big boobs.
They're pretty big. Justin?
Well, I think the Peter Cushing or the Vincent Price dressed in the makeup, he borrows that ginger wig and then goes on to have a couple of minor chart successes in the early 1980s before disappearing into obscurity and appearing on Celebrity Cash in the Attic.
Do you think Vincent Price is Toya? Is that what you're saying?
How dare you?
It could happen.
There's nothing more prestigious than appearing on Celebrity Cash in the Attic.
Did you see, actually talking of Toya, did you see she's appearing in Gran Canaria, Mardi Gras?
Oh, you'll be near, will you?
Well, be near, but she's appearing next to a dwarf drag act, which, at Sparkle Show Bar, which I've been to, Sparkle Show Bar in Gran Canaria, and it is quite funny, but I don't. I'm sure that's like I said in the post. It'll be it's a Sparkle Show Bar in Gran Canaria.
Did you hear what Susie's up to recently? Nothing, because she's a washed-up has-been, and nobody wants to listen to her stupid records that are tuneless and stupid.
Apart from our friend in Sheffield,
well, he's stupid as well.
So anyway, at the risk of we can see it's going to be a right old punch up tomorrow night, isn't it? When we do the drunk cast.
Oh, tomorrow night should be very interesting. At least we're talking about movies we like this time. Well, movies. I don't know about you guys, but I like them.
Well, we'll find out.
Wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see. So, well, let's play how to get in contact with the show, and this is also how you can listen to the Demons 1-2 Drunkcast. Hold on 1 second. Here we go.
The content of this podcast was provided by Justin Kurzweil, Erik Frillfall, Nathan Johnson, and Joseph Henson. If you enjoy our program and are willing and able to provide a donation, please visit us on Patreon and become a content-designated subscriber. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. For non-subscriber PayPal donations and general feedback, our address is the.hysteria.continues@gmail.com. To listen and interact, simply search for The Hysteria Continues on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Susie versus Toya forever.
Yeah, and please do become a Patreon supporter, and thank you to all of you who already are. We're very, very grateful. It helps support the show and helps us keep up to our high standards that we hold ourselves to. Well, apart from Erik, of course. So we're doing the Demons 1-2 Drunkcast tomorrow night, so it'll be out later this month. And it should be, well, if you heard a previous Drunkcast, you might have some idea what you're letting yourself in for. Plus,
what was it? Halloween Resurrection, wasn't it?
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I think it was.
No, that's right. Yeah. There'll be 2 original songs sung by us. Myself and Nathan are duetting, and Erik and Joseph are duetting on something else, but both songs from the Demons films. So tune in to find out what those are. And remember to wear earmuffs. So do we have
You're
a
in
joke?
Twisted Hysteria anyway.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I'll have you know.
We are truly outrageous.
That I have the voice of an archangel.
Yeah. And I have the voice of Toya.
Yes,
well,
Lucifer.
oh dear, that's not going to make anyone want to listen.
It's a nice day for a white wedding.
There.
And Nathan, always you've got like your voice. You become very British sounding with a falsetto.
I thought that when we sang, I sang in a British accent.
No, it's very good. It's very good. Yes.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, I was like, dang, I'm good.
You're very
good. That's what I was thinking when I heard it.
Somebody likes himself.
And I'm so modest. I'm the best at being modest.
Well, I did try auto-tuning our voices, but they were so pitch perfect anyway, it didn't make any difference.
Oh, yeah, auto-tune, it can't make us any better.
No.
I can't. I have to say that we'll end up having chart toppers. We'll be on that. What is the top of the pops?
They'll bring it back just for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tune in for that.
More like Pop of the Tops.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
You're going to get popped on by your top.
What?
Oh dear.
It's a gay joke. God.
Oh, good grief! Yeah, that was.
That's insulting to the gay community.
It is.
Yes, I'm so offended. I'm going to sue you now.
Yeah. I'm sure you are.
Well,
you're a litigious bastard.
Talking of jokes.
It's my joke of the week. It's so fantastic.
Okay, this was kind of last minute. So on Madhouse, the director said that Vincent Price was quite tough to work with, whilst conversely, Peter Cushing was very soft.
I like that one.
That was good, Erik.
That was not bad, considering that was... did you make that up on spur of the moment?
No, I had it made up this morning, but inspiration was running dry.
You should do all your jokes last minute.
Yeah.
I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or not.
Well, so we are coming to the end of this episode anyway. So what are we covering next time?
It's
what's with the butt and knives?
Friday the 13th is coming up, so we're going to be tackling Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, so that's coming up next time, and obviously you know what's coming up for a Patreon pick. So
I don't know, what is it? I don't think we've mentioned it.
Well, join us next time for Freddy vs. Jason, or join us for Patreon, our Patreon pick, Demons 1 and 2, Drunkcast, and drink along with the fun or the abject horror of it all. We're going to play out. I did think Vincent Price does sing the theme tune over the end of this, but it's I decided not to go with that. But if you want to hear it, watch the film. I'm going to play out with Momus's the song, and I can't remember the title of it now. What's Death Going to Be Like? I think is the
Who's the artist?
title.
Did you say
Momus? Do you know Momus?
No.
You'd like Momus.
Would I?
You would.
Did they wear black lipstick?
No, it's a gentleman.
Does he wear black lipstick?
No, he's big in Japan. But you'd like him. He's very English sounding, but he's actually Scottish. Okay. And this is from about 1986 or something.
Oh, he should have said 1986 and I would have been on board. Yay.
Yeah, I mean, so I just have to mention the 80s.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to our episode on 1974's Madhouse. And, we'll say goodbye to the good people.
Bye. Tune in next week when we cover 1990's Madhouse.
Yes, please. Goodbye.
It's a triple feature.
Well, then we have to do 2004's Madhouse as well.